today. So I'm going to let them start us off and why they wanted to have it today.
Okay. So Deidre and I had a lot of conversations about, the market and what's going on. The Wild West is out there right now, and how to get yourself, how do you get your buyer in contract when you're up against 30, 40, I've heard as high as 60 offers. And it's just crazy. So we wanted to really just kind of come together as a brokerage and say, what do we do? Like, not just, as us being the teachers, but also to learn and say, what is everyone doing to get their buyer in contract, and how are we to win the house for our buyers? Because ultimately that's the goal, is we want to be there for our buyer and to help them get the house that they love. And, so that's really the question that we want to talk about, and to kind of come together and get ideas from everyone and talk about what everyone's doing, and how can we as a brokerage be more successful.
Mm-hmm. And are you doing more than just the standard, appraisal, shortage coverage, waiving the request to remedy, waiving the appraisal? I mean, what else are you writing in the contract that is getting the attention of your sellers? I mean, we all know those basics, but is there anything else that we could do? So we wanted to just kind of open it up to see listing agents that are here. What have you seen come across in the contracts that have really piqued your interest and maybe caught the seller's interest? So that's basically it. Help.
Well, it's just great. Thoughts, anybody?
Should we lead with a question?
Sure.
You can dive in. So, yeah. You want me to lead with a question?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So what are you guys, buyers agents on the call, or just both agents, what are some of the tools that you are using? And then that'll help us identify maybe some of the other things that we're seeing on contracts.
So I think for me, on top of, the basics, communicating with the listing agent and being just very upfront, like, this is the offer, contacting the listing agent, letting them know that your buyers are really interested, instead of just sending an email with the attached documents and letting them just look at it, I guess so just being more communicative is one of the things that I try to do with every offer.
So Erica, right up front, do you have, or have you seen like an offer breakdown sheet that is a one-page snapshot that they can get right in your email without going through the docs, know exactly where that stands, versus if a listing agent's collecting like 40 offers and they have to read through 14 pages of every offer, it could be incredibly draining, right?
Yes.
So we want to put the highlights right in front of them, the strengths of the offer right in front of them, so on and so forth.
Absolutely. That's what I do. I don't have a sheet, but I just, in my email, I'm just like, here's my highlights of the offer, so that they don't have to go through 14 different pages of my offer, because I know most of the time that there's another more than just my offer to go through. So.
Well, and I'll kind of piggyback off that, because while communication with us as the listing agent is so important, when we're collecting 20, 30, 40 offers, we at the same time don't have time to talk to everybody. We're getting 80 phone calls and 40 text messages. So one of the things that our listing team has pivoted to was really just requesting that the agents put everything in an email, because that's going to be the best way to get in touch with us at that point when we're getting so inundated. So I think having a very strongly written, clear, broken down, upfront email with all of the contract documents provided initially, we get 5.loop shares with every little piecemeal of document. We got to try to put it all together. So having it very easy and straightforward, to me, from a communication standpoint, the communication has kind of shifted a little bit based on demand, where that to me is the strong communication.
I think also like making sure you're doing your homework, right? Are you reading the agent remarks? Are you reading any attached documents? Are you submitting and communicating the way that a listing agent is instructing you? Because I just know overhearing calls from our team, if somebody calls and asks a question that they didn't go in the MLS and look for, sends a wrong message, sends a completely wrong message to the agent.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with that.
I would agree with that because last summer I had some offers on a listing that it was clear that they did not read the agent to agent comments, left off earnest money. They didn't complete hardly anything on the last page.
Mhm.
And when I'm going through offers, I look at that and go, well, if they're going to do that for their buyer, how easy are they going to help us to get to the closing table?
Mhm. So Rachel posed a question to me this morning regarding whether or not it's a good idea to post for the listing agent to post in instructions preferred clauses that the seller would be looking for. So Jill and I just actually 10 minutes ago discussed this. And because we're both married to attorneys, we tend to think how they're going to think about it. And we have come to the conclusion that it isn't our obligation to make sure that the listing agent has attorney-approved clauses. We don't have a fiduciary duty. However, the fiduciary duty we have is to our to our buyer, so that we would not use any of their clauses unless they are attorney-approved clauses at Columbus Realtors. We would not use those unless our buyer had an attorney review them. So we're trying to look at it from the other side. Now, as to whether you in this market center as a listing agent should present preferred clauses only if an attorney wrote them. Okay? And that would sift out some of the incompetence out there. So we have attorney-approved clauses in Columbus Realtors, but there are some others. And so I'm going to be talking to Bill and Ken as to whether or not they would want to write some for us on some specific issues that we haven't got in standard clauses. But Rachel tells me, and perhaps others can confirm, that there are listing agents out there saying use these preferred clauses. Now, preferred doesn't mean you have to, okay? And you must understand that using a clause that an attorney didn't write is very dangerous for you to do for a whole host of reasons, which I will not bring your Friday down to discuss.
Have you guys seen those in some of those offer structure sheets?
Yeah, I've come across it a couple of times.
Yeah.
So would they be, Deidre, the approved escalation clause with Columbus Realtors? Would they be the approved seller's occupancy after closing document? What kind of clauses are you seeing?
Oh gosh. Oh, now I'm drawing a blank.
Anybody?
I've seen what you're talking about. I've just seen like one-liners.
Yeah.
Like maybe an as-is clause?
Yes.
Yeah. So I think I had Dave Keister write us an as-is clause, and I'll put that out there as an approved clause because an attorney wrote it. That we could use. But anyway, I just wanted to interject that since it was timely and Rachel asked me about it this morning. I'm concerned that you agents representing buyers see that coming from a listing agent and think that you have to do it
and you don't, And that's where
unless you,
it came from, was
yeah. So a cautionary
Yeah.
thing there. Listing agents, if you are including instructions, I need for you to attach those and submit them into compliance. That's the reason I look at A2A remarks, but if in A2A, all you're going to say is see instruction document in MLS, then if I don't get to see that, that's a problem. Okay, so, so do that. So any creative stuff going on out there?
I'll chime in for 1 second. I think one of the important pieces to everything is making sure your buyer wants to compete for a property or can compete for a property.
Right.
Because, and I always lead when I'm having a dialogue, and I have a client right now. They're both school teachers and they don't have a lot of cash to cover a deficient appraisal. And it's really frustrating, right? Because right now, especially, I'm feeling very empathetic to firefighters, police officers, teachers in this market who need a house, who deserve a house, and just don't have the firepower to purchase a house. So, and I don't want to lead them through this journey of the anticipation that they may be able to get a house when they actually can't, right? And so I think for me, I'm doing a really good job at writing less offers. And when I am writing an offer, I feel confident that we are in an area, a small window where we're going to be able to compete. And I'm very good. I feel like having conversations with listing agents, and I almost say it like, listen, I know you don't want to be looking through 20 offers when only 5 of them are actually good offers. And I don't want to be one of the 15 that is not a good offer. So please let me know if this is going to be able to compete, because I have 2 children at home and I don't want to be spending an hour of my time writing an offer that's just going to be numbers on a paper that aren't going to compete. And a lot of times when you approach it that way, the listing agent is going to say, sometimes they're completely like tight-lipped and they're not going to tell you anything, right? They're just going to say, just put your highest and best out there and we'll see what happens. And when that happens, yeah, you just got to put in an offer and cross your fingers. But a lot of times agents are going to be empathetic to your situation because they're right. Like they don't, I've been on the receiving end of 20, 30, 40 offers, and I'm sitting here, I'm trying to put everything into a spreadsheet and it's exhausting. So I would say if you're representing buyers that have the ability to compete in like $20, $30, $40,000 above list price and have that kind of cash, then you just have to figure out where you have to be in order to compete. But I don't want to be writing offers that aren't competitive. So that's the very first thing that I'm almost qualifying is, I could show you a text message. They sent me 7 properties that, they like, and I'm like, you guys probably only have the ability to even get in the door and compete with one of them. And I'm calling those agents beforehand to figure out if we can compete or can't compete. And Jonathan, you sound like you're ready to go. No? Oh, but yeah, so that's what I do. So I would encourage everyone, and Erica, you mentioned it, that you get on the phone and you talk to the listing agent and figure out, okay, this is the firepower that we have. Is that going to even move the needle for you guys? Because I'm not even going on the showing.
Yeah, and I would, to piggyback off that, and I wish Aaliyah was on this call because she's been a big champion of the listing team while I was out. But yeah, we get a lot of offers. I mean, if you're under asking and it's the first weekend, why bother? Kind of for a lot of these properties. So we do get a lot of offers that are just not even in the ballpark of being able to compete. And I think as a buyer's agent, it's really beneficial for you guys to have honest conversations with your clients about what the situation of the house is and what they can do in order to save everybody a little bit of time, effort, and at the end of the day, frustration or heartache, because we do get a lot of offers that aren't even close, and it creates a lot of work for buyer's agents, listing agents, clients, everybody in between, and you're not going to get anywhere with that. So I think having, one of the biggest things in this market is buyer's agents having honest conversations with their clients, and Jonathan and I coach on this a lot with our agents, And it's okay. That's what they hire you for. They hire you to be honest with them and tell them the truth and help
Exactly.
them be capable buyers based on their financial situation. And it's okay if, you know, it's not the right time for them or it's not the right market for them. Sometimes that's not great either because you don't want to lose a client. But it's going to be a big uphill challenge along the way if you don't have those conversations up front.
Yeah, and think about it this way. Like if you're having honest conversations with both your buyers and the listing agent, with your buyers, then you can say, listen, we can't focus on these properties that just come on the market within 3 days and are in, you know, the Dublin School District and we're looking under $300,000. I mean, we need to be focusing our time in different areas because if we're spinning our wheels here, we're missing opportunities in areas where we can compete. So you have to look at it from that angle. And then if you find one where like it makes sense and you're having that conversation with the listing agent, come at it as a point of how can I add value to the listing agent in this situation? And if you say, listen, I know you don't want to be looking through offers that aren't competitive. I don't want to write offers that aren't competitive and I want to respect your time. And then you say, so if we're here, is that something worth writing? And they say yes or no. You give them a yes or a no answer. But if you kind of say, if you leave it open and they say, hey, where are you guys at right now? Then they can say, yeah, we're somewhere around 5. They can give you like a gray area. But if you ask a yes and no question and they reply with yes or no, then you've got the information that you need. And if it's no, you know, okay, well, we can't compete. If it's yes, then go one step further and say, well, if we were to do this even further, or if we were to do this even further, then you just keep asking yes or no questions. And if you continue to get yeses, then you keep going down that path of more yes. And then you figure out what the offer really needs to look like. But if you get that no and you can't do it, then don't show the property. I'm not going to show the property.
Mhm. Is it helpful to do a reverse CMA maybe?
I just had this thought last night, Lori.
Yeah.
It was one of my nighttime shower thoughts about as we were having a team discussion about settlement statements and just making sure everything's correct on a settlement statement when title sends it over. And nowadays, everything is like flip-flopped. So buyers are providing closing costs for sellers. Buyers are paying their own home warranty. Buyers are paying title insurance. Buyers agents are cutting commissions. So it's almost like just kind of flipped the settlement statement from 5 years ago. So I had the shower thought last night of training our agents on doing buyer settlement statements so that they can understand when they are willing to pay their own warranty, pay their title insurance, pay seller closing costs, whatever that looks like, they know financially what that impact is going to be.
Right.
I have a spreadsheet for that exact purpose. So we can play with, if you offer this price and this much in closing costs and this much in appraisal gap, what is that going to mean in the bottom line, assuming a reasonable appraisal? And it's helped them feel much more comfortable with what they're putting on the table for the property.
Because
That's awesome. I'd like to see that spreadsheet.
Okay.
Yeah.
Can you share it maybe with
really
Rachel? And Rachel, could you forward it out?
Yeah, it's a Google sheet. I can make a blank template and share it.
Awesome.
I like that idea, Rachel. And thank you, Susan. That's awesome.
I think, you know, back in the qualifying interview, presenting, so say they're qualified to 250 or something, presenting the souls that were asking price 250 and what they actually sold for, getting it out there, reverse CMA saying, you know, you were qualified for 250, you wouldn't have gotten in the door. So we're going to have to back the number down with available cash. So because, you know, Article 1 of our Code of Ethics says that we have a duty to protect and promote. And we're not protecting them if we're setting them up for weekend after weekend after weekend of failure. So, you know, I think this is great. This is honest. These are people with feelings.
And I think like what we're saying is the service today looks completely different. Like we can't just say, yeah, I can get you in. Yeah, we can submit offers. Yeah, you can compete. Like that's not service in this market. That may be what people want to hear. That may be what a desperate agent is telling them, but that's not real service. So having a reverse CMA, doing like a reverse net to expense to buyer, I guess is what we're kind of saying without having a name for it,
Mhm.
showing them, that's how you're going to build trust, because you're just communicating facts and evidence. It may not be what they want to hear, but you're preparing them for what's to come. That's different than telling somebody what they want to hear. And I think also as a new agent, it's not about like how many people you're working with right now. Like more leads doesn't really solve a problem. It's the conversion and taking the extra time in the consultations and preparing somebody for what's coming. You really have to invest more time identifying and qualifying great people that are worth going out 3 or 4 weekends because they stand a fighting chance, than taking every call that comes in off of an open house or a sign and they want a piece of your commission. And what are you going to do for them? Those people can kick rocks. Like, you are a professional. You can demand if you are prepared to work with very qualified people. And that's who you want to be looking for. And that's your time, the best use of your time. So service has changed. Like, service 2 years ago doesn't work in this market. And this conversation is great because what we're talking about is elevating our service and pursuing the best, excellent representation that we possibly can.
Right.
And I think too, we got to be comfortable having conversations with our clients saying, hey, listen, maybe a 6-month lease is in your best interest, and let's reevaluate what the market's giving us in the fall. Because right now, I get it, the bank says you're pre-approved, but the market's telling us you're not. I mean, you can't make something up, right? And that's okay to deliver that information, because then they're going to go and hopefully we can put them on a plan where they're going to save a little bit more. They have more firepower to cover a deficient appraisal or whatever it is. I love what Jonathan just said, because I don't think it could be what you put into a purchase contract, a different term clause covering some sort of cost somewhere. But the bottom line is, if we're not educating the client on the front end of this entire process, you're not doing them the service of being the true fiduciary. And it's just all in the preparation up front. I mean, because I'm just like Rachel, when I have a listing with 30 offers, I can almost like look through the first few pages and plug your ears, Lori, and almost throw the offer right out the window, right? I mean, it's just like you see the front 2 pages and you're like, why are they even here right now? Why are they even doing this? And are they so far disconnected from the market that they're really submitting these type of offers?
I think they
Okay, you can
submit these.
unplug your ears now, Lori. I look at every offer and I dissect it and present it to my clients
I do what my sellers permit me to do. And a lot of times we have conversations about them allowing me to select what, in my professional experience, is the top 3 to 5 offers.
I would say,
I mean, you have
if
to
you're
present
asking me,
them all.
95% of it is upfront. It truly is, and making sure that they know what the market is truly, and it's not a piece of like a pre-approval, and that means they can go out and purchase a $250,000 home.
Incompetence is a violation of your code of ethics.
I
And
have
this borders on that. Because if you haven't had this conversation up front with your people, you are not protecting them, you are not serving them, you are not complying with fiduciary duties, which is truth telling. Always. And truth hurts. They get over it. They get on a plan. Remember the days when we used to do credit counseling? And we'd get them, 6 months, 12 months, sometimes 2 years to straighten that out to get a house. It's not for everybody right now, but that is really difficult, I know, to come to grips. But the quicker you as an agent come to grips with that, the better it is. So that I do believe that perhaps as high as 40% of the offers are maybe higher, are written by incompetent agents who have not counseled their people. They're not counseling their people. Would listing agents agree with that?
I think they're submitting offers with a pipe dream. Just throwing
Right.
it out there and hoping.
Which is not your duty.
It's not a strategy.
So as a new agent, right, to take away a couple points here. Number one from Taylor is have a backup plan, right? Now, if you deal with somebody who you spend an hour and a half with and they're just not going to be qualified, give them a backup plan, put them on some sort of a plan and keep in touch with them, because they may drift off to another agent who is going to tell them what they want to hear, and then they're going to completely fail miserably, and they will eventually come back to you if you keep in touch with them. That is your responsibility to build a pipeline, nurture it, and maintain it, right? You will build future business in doing that, and they will come back to you with trust and respect because you told them what was going to happen, whether they didn't believe it or not. They're going to come back after they experience it, and you will forever be their advisor. Okay. Now, the other side of what Lori said is how many people are submitting an offer that they're just incompetent. Okay, well, if there is 9,000 licensees in our MLS, and right now I just looked without doing anything, I just clicked active, there's 1,600 homes available, right? Looking ahead going into the weekend. That mathematic just does not add up. So if you have 10 listing agents in this office who have a pipeline of 10 listings, that is 100 opportunities within the office. I can promise you that incompetent agents are submitting offers. And as a listing agent, you're probably going to gravitate to somebody you have a relationship with, trust their offer, worked with before, and you can work together. It's better representation for your client, even as a listing agent. So start looking in the office. Start looking at maybe a for sale by owner. We have to do more than depend on the MLS. That is passive representation. It's not going to work. 9,000 other agents are doing the exact same thing. So how are you going to separate yourself? If there's plenty of business in this office that you can match make with the new exclusive and the Airtable that the front office puts out, and the more people that get on there and the more people that use it, the more popular it's going to become and the better it's going to serve us. And frankly, it's better for the clients, both buyer and seller, because now you can actually work the deals instead of filtering through who's competent, who's incompetent, who's submitting a pipe dream, who's off their rocker, and who's actually got a reputation that you can lean on and work together with. Right? Those are agent-to-agent relationships. That is good representation for your client. And we have to go out there and build those. And thankfully, we now have a resource under this roof to expose the opportunities and play matchmaker. So start working and asking around and submitting those emails to the office of what you're looking for in your buyer and start connecting the dots right here.
Love the passion.
Welcome to my life.
Mm-hmm. Gosh, I'm fired up.
So on a more practical, like tangible practice perspective, I know you guys, we want to make sure that everybody has some thoughts and some takeaways as they head into this weekend out with buyers and showings and offers and all that good stuff. So we talked about what things that we're seeing in the marketplace. And I know you said one of the competitive things that you do is communication. What else are you guys doing? I know we talk about appraisal gap coverages. I know that or shortages. We talk about as-is purchases. Are you guys utilizing any other tools or tactics that have been successful for you?
If I'm on the listing agent side, and someone says they're going to cover $30,000 of a short appraisal, you better have verification of funds. And those verification of funds better include at least a 5% down, including the appraisal deficiency. That's number one. I'm not really, because I know people are just bait and switching all over the place where they get a property in contract. Next thing you know, you're 2 weeks in and you get the appraisal back, and then they're like, well, that's a little bit more than we thought it was going to come back at.
Right. This happened twice last week. $42,000 shortage. Nobody thought it would be that bad. Panic button. So here's the deal. One, the lender turned down the financing. So verification of the funds is not enough. I need you listing agents to say the appraisal will not be used to deny financing.
Is there a clause for that?
I just gave it to you.
Write it down.
So what does that mean, buyers agents? That means you better call the lender and make sure
That was the second piece of it. Call the lender or
Yeah.
have the lender call you.
See, because the lenders haven't agreed to the clauses you wrote. And we got 2 that blew up because of financing, because of the appraisal. And it didn't matter about the shortage coverage.
Is that because the buyer is going to the lender and saying, I can't do this, deny my loan?
Could be. But if you countered it and they bought into that and agreed to that,
A lot of time too, they just don't have the cash to cover the down payment and the gap, the appraisal deficiency. And
because
so like
now-
if they prove, like this happened to me, they gave me like a bank statement of $80,000
Mhm.
and the appraisal came back, I don't know, $40,000 short. And they didn't have enough for the down payment plus the appraisal deficiency. So they would have been able to terminate based on financing.
right.
But there's some creative, I mean, it's all about where the numbers fall. And that's why my spreadsheet is so crucial, because if they were going to put 40% down and now they have a $40,000 appraisal gap. So now instead of 40% down, put 10% down, you're still putting the same cash into the deal. It just looks different on the lender side.
Sure.
Remember, there's a clause in clause 3 of the contract that allows the buyer to get out if the terms and conditions of the loan have changed.
Yep.
So
So we have to be careful of that.
we do.
I think that clause, Lori, that you were talking about, just making sure that when we counter these appraisal pieces,
Mhm.
that it cannot be used to deny financing.
Right?
That takes care of all of it. Okay.
But again, buyer's agents, you have to have a heart-to-heart with your lender partner. And of course, if you have no control over the lender partner, you know where that's going. Down the chute fast.
I've had some really important talks with some buyers about, because they come with a lender that I know, right now you can lose the offer based on the lender you're coming with.
Mhm.
And I tell them that, look, all of us agents know who's easy to work with, who's trustworthy, and who is not. And if you have one of those lenders, you're not in this arena, you're not going to win.
Mhm.
So I also know that we're seeing a lot of as is.
Mhm.
And I know we touched on appraisal. And so every offer we get is pretty much as is these days, it seems like. And then the listing agents always get hit with the, oh, here's 10 things we found during that as is phase. So as buyer's agents, one of the things that we started coaching on with our listing agents is qualifying these buyer's agents and their clients. How many houses have they offered on? How many times have they come in and out of contract? Is this their first home purchase?
Mm.
What is their motivation to buy this home? What is, if they're in a lease, when is their lease up? Because if their lease isn't up for 8 months, they're going to be a lot more flexible on what they're willing to work through to get the deal done, or not, based on how comfortable they are on the back end. So really, one of the things, and part of communication, Erica, like you were talking about, is how are you expressing what your client's experience is in owning or purchasing a home? What are they going to be comfortable with? Are they first-time home buyers and dad's going to show up on the inspection and blow the deal up? Do they understand what as is means for everyone? So that's one of the biggest things that we've seen as well is, we work so hard to get in a contract and everything shifts sideways when we start working through some of those front-end contingencies.
So Rachel brings up a discussion point now that we have to have. How much are we at liberty to discuss on behalf of our buyer to a listing agent? Because you can't answer her questions without their permission.
I usually specifically ask those very questions. I ask them now. I didn't used to ask, how much money do you have in the bank? But now I do. Like, I need to know so that I can structure your deal to win.
Well,
And
that's
so
you asking your client, but what do you do when Rachel asks you?
I ask before we even are making the offer, do I have permission to share? And I will tell them this is a first time home buyer, but they have a mom and a dad who have rehabbed their own house and they are willing to roll up their sleeves and work. And I always put that in my letter when I put my offer in, because we all know there are people out there buying houses that want turnkey and they don't even want to paint.
And honestly, I don't blame buyers. I mean, we talk about this all the time. Sometimes I think they get caught up in just competing to win.
Yeah.
They win and they're like, oh my God, we won. Oh my God, what did we just do? And so they feel all of this buyer's remorse
Mhm.
throughout those first few days. And then the inspection comes back and it's got 40 pages of things that just popped up, and they start second guessing how much they're paying for the conditions that they just found. And, it's very overwhelming, knowing how much they are going to be coming out of pocket and accepting some of these things that they're finding on those inspection reports. So we see a lot of buyer's remorse. So us as listing agents, knowing what your buyer's experience is in owning a home or purchasing a home means a lot to us, because we know, okay, if they're a rookie or they're not, or who the decision makers are, who's going to be involved in this process, what some of those things are going to be along the way. And then we get to express it to our sellers. But I'll tell you, when I ask, most buyers agents just rattle off. They probably don't ask permission, but that's on them.
I never allowed my sellers to be home because they yap, and we don't want them there. Because don't forget, I was also a buyer's agent, and I was crafty enough to get the answers I needed from any seller sitting anywhere, anytime, anyhow. So we got to be careful. So buyer's agents, everybody just heard what we said here. Be careful about what you do say. Can come back to bite you.
You can prepare buyers for that remorse. I always tell I love first time home buyers, because I remember when I was 29 and I bought my first house, and the day after closing, I walked in this empty house and sat down and cried and thought, holy shit, what did I just do? And I always tell that story and tell them, you're going to have that moment. It might be the day we put the offer in. It might be the day you win. It might be the day after closing, but you're going to have that moment where you realize, what did I just do? And that way, when they have that moment, because they all do, they know, oh yeah, she said I'd have this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
There's a good script for that from a podcast, and they basically just say, like, when you go into contract, the buyers are going to go home and they're going to think, oh my gosh, I overpaid. And the exact same evening, the sellers are going to go to bed thinking, we sold it. We could have got more. We could have got more. And so you just try to balance the emotional and logical, the way they call them, emotional and logical island. And that's exactly what Susan's saying, is that when you lay it out, they know what to expect, and those feelings don't seem so unnatural, and there's no panic to follow. It's like, this is just part of, what we're going to do when we put our best foot forward.
Right. Residential is emotional. For sure.
So do you guys want to know what our winning offers have been lately? I feel like that's one of the things that you guys are curious about.
Yeah.
Cash.
Taylor can pitch in too. You're on the listing side.
Cash.
Verified cash.
Verified cash.
Well, and it's more than that. It's net. So it's really what the sellers are netting. That's what we're looking at. Price, yes, very much important. All of our offers are going well above asking. So yes, price is a big part of that. Also, what are some of the things that add to a seller's net?
Paying their costs. Paying title insurance is a big one. Paying the buyer's real estate commission.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
So we're seeing they're paying their own home warranty. They're offering closing costs to the seller. They're paying their own title insurance. The buyer's agents are taking a commission reduction to buffer that net to the seller. So we're seeing a lot of those things add to that net number. So even if we have an offer at $250 and $250, and one of them provides all of these other additional credits, we have a much higher net on that offer than we do with one that doesn't. So we're looking at that. And one of the things that I always challenge our agents to think about, especially Leah on the listing side, because we're getting a lot of offers that'll say, you know, we'll pay $5,000 of the seller's closing costs. What is that? Like, what are their closing costs? Because title insurance and closing fees don't equate to $5,000. We might be leaving money on the table, right? So what actually is or qualifies as closing costs? So typically we'll counter a lot of those things. So that $5,000 credit gets used in its entirety. So we'll counter that. It'll be used towards title insurance. It'll be used towards closing and prep fees. It'll be used towards commissions, all of those things. Just like we would in a different situation where we're asking for buyer closing costs, which hasn't happened often. You know, we're making sure that we can use for all things, and we even put inspections in there and things like that that could be credited back.
So the conversation then for the buyer's agents are, if you're going to put $40,000 towards an appraisal shortage, you better just be ready to kiss all $40,000 goodbye, right? Because a savvy listing agent is going to counter with ways to guarantee that money for their seller. So it's really not like, oh, well, let's put 40 and see what it comes back at. That's the wrong conversation.
Put 40
The real conversation is the expectations of what are you willing to just part ways with.
That's a great strategy.
So is it advantageous for the buyer's agent to, instead of just like you said, throwing 40 grand out there and seeing what happens, if you want to be the winning offer, to break that down for the sellers ahead of time as your offer, to say, you know, we'll apply this to the appraisal shortage, we'll apply this to the seller's closing costs, we'll apply this to the buyer's, you know, commission.
To me, an appraisal gap coverage is a shot in the dark. Nobody knows how that's going to come back. It can come back 10 grand, it can come back 20, it can come back 40. I like sure things, and that's what I talk to our seller clients about. So I know if you are applying a certain amount of credit towards the seller's closing costs, their commission, their title insurance, their closing fees, whatever is allocated in that clause, I know that that's a sure thing regardless of what happens with the appraisal.
Right.
So
Now I'm also looking for the appraisal, but if I have offers where one offers $25,000 of an appraisal deficiency coverage with none of those things, and I have another one that maybe offers $20,000 of an appraisal deficiency covers and offers to cover some of these other sure things, to me, the one that even has the less appraisal but more credits, the better position for my seller.
Erica, to answer your question, you don't want to proactively use your client's money for the listing agent, because not all listing agents have a clue how to do this for their seller, right? This is how we win listings and we display our value. Okay. So you just want to have the conversation where your clients are prepared to spend whatever that amount is. And then maybe not, a listing agent won't know how to counter that all towards guaranteeing it to the seller, right? So don't set that up for them unless you're a great listing agent. But the other part is, like, so many people in the marketplace have this like theory that drives their behavior of like, oh, well, let's just see. Let's just do 40,000. Let's just see. You need to be very assertive in the idea that will never work in this market, that is only setting themselves up for the failure that is to come, and be very upfront with the conversation that they are okay investing this amount of money in winning the house. And then the cherry on top is, you know, some of these listing agents don't have a clue how to do this, and maybe it comes back and they don't use it all, but prepare them to. That's part of us leading with good service and honest, factual expectations at the table.
And I would agree with that, because if you send over some of these clauses and it's an agent that doesn't have a ton of experience, they're not going to really know how to interpret this when they communicate and present this to their seller client. So communication on the buyer's agent side is huge in that regard, so that you can help coach them how to have this conversation with their seller and help them understand what it means, so that you guys can better position yourself to win. But that also says, you know, who's on the other side of the table. Make sure you're researching who that other agent is, what their experience level is, have conversations with them about what they view as the most important based on their conversations with their seller, because that's what you want to play towards, because that's what they understand.
I've come across that too, where the listing agent came back and wanted more in appraisal gap, even though we were giving more to the closing costs of the seller. They wanted to go with the other offer that had the larger appraisal gap. And I was scratching my head. And so what I've learned exactly that, Rachel. I have to know what does that listing agent, how does this listing agent interpret the market? Because that's what their seller is hearing. And sometimes I've had listing agents that didn't have a clue what to do with multiple offers and escalations. They were completely in the dark. Like, this gal had 4 offers and she couldn't figure it out. That's concerning. That makes it really hard for those of us that kind of know what we're doing. You know, I like dealing with you guys because I know you know what you're doing.
It's, yeah, I see some of these offers and I'm scratching my head.
Yeah, and to Rachel's point, know who your co-op could be. That is so key. If you look and you see their license number is, they've only been licensed for a year, you're really going to have to walk them through what your offer looks like and where the strong points of your offer is. And if you see someone that has a team, understand who is the real true listing agent and who you need to be communicating with, right? If you see two people are a listing agent, figure out who the primary one is and who the one is going to be answering the questions. I can't. And then like Jonathan said earlier, I mean, I want to do business with people where I know the transaction is going to get to the closing table. And I don't, if it's 10 agents who I don't know who they are, boy, you better have good communication and you better be telling me everything I want to know that I know. So I know that this transaction is going to get to the closing table, because if it doesn't, boy, oh boy, in this market, that could be some big bucks.
It's money on the table, guys. We have to think of it that way. If our buyer is willing to put so much money on the table, how can we creatively use it?
Well, and also I think like that proactive conversation with your clients as to what they're willing to do and able to do, that's your responsibility to know that before you present an offer. Otherwise, we're misrepresenting offers or contracts. So, and that could lead to, and we've had this story where we've had to put complaints into the division because someone offered an appraisal deficiency and they didn't even have the funds, even though we put in our counter and they accepted the certain terms. I mean, that could lead to lawsuits because we know if a house goes in contract, the market in April is feeling different than it is in May. It'll feel different in June. So if we've come back on the market and that seller has now lost potential income because your buyers breached contract in April and we have a little bit of a different market in May, or I call them residual buyers from the hot spring market.
It's a suit for damages. Yeah.
And I've been subpoenaed for one of those cases before.
I got to jump off. I have a noon appointment, but Erica, Deidre, or anyone on the call, if you have further questions, just knock on the door. I'm open to share whatever I know.
Yeah, I think I'm going to get off too. One of the biggest takeaways is the Office exclusive. The faster we can get everybody on board to using that as like the main resource, those are opportunities that are only housed here. Not 9,000 agents are competing from them. You may have like 70 of them right here, and then we're piecing it together. That is the biggest takeaway in my mind that we can use to competitively represent our buyers and sellers, frankly, right? It's just better. It's better business.
And pre-qualify your buyers. You got to have honest conversations before you put them in the front seat of your car. And they need to know what the market is and if they can compete or if they can't compete. That's the bottom line, because think of it this way. If you're working with buyers who are not qualified to purchase in your market, then it's taking your opportunity away from finding buyers that are qualified to purchase in this market.
Right.
Thanks, guys. Over and out.
Thanks,
Are there
Taylor.
Taylor.
questions before we all hop off? Erica, Deidre, thank you so much for putting this together. I think it's so good to stay connected and learn from each other.
No, thank you. Thank you for participating. And this is what we wanted, is just a good conversation about
Mm.
buying in this crazy market. So I appreciate all the feedback and information, and feel like I've come away with some really good stuff. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you guys. I do appreciate you taking your time and opening this up for us. It's been very helpful.
Keep doing good things, everybody. We get better and better.
Thanks, everybody. See ya.
Thanks.
Bye.